Chapter 1 of Balakanda, Valmiki and Narada. Jai Shri Ram. Tamasa was the river on the banks of which was built the ashrama of Valmiki, the great sage. He was famed the world over for his great tapas, for his Gurukula, which had many disciples learning the sacred lore under him. Once the Rishi was sunk in reverie, and to him came Narada, the divine Rishi. Narada, the son of Brahma, the creator. Watching Narada's fingers strumming the strings of the veena, Valmiki sat without speaking a word. Narada asked him what his thoughts were, and the Rishi replied, "You are the son of Brahma, and you are like Vayu, the god of wind. You can enter everywhere, even into the minds of men, and know what thoughts there are in the innermost hearts of living beings. You must be knowing what has been teasing me for quite some time now. I wonder if there is, in this world of men, a single individual, a man blessed with all the many good qualities which one can think of. Tell me what these qualities are," said Narada, "and I will try and tell you if there is one endowed with all of them, and thus satisfy your curiosity." "Integrity," said Valmiki. "Integrity, bravery, righteousness, gratitude, truthfulness, dedication to one's principles, character without blemish, concern for all living beings, learning, skill, beauty, a pleasing appearance, courage, radiance, ability to keep anger under control, perfect control, a lack of jealousy at all times, undaunted heroism which can frighten even the celestials." Valmiki paused for a while after enumerating all these many qualities, and then said with a smile, "I know I am expecting perfection in a human being, but I wonder if there is such a person. Is it possible for a single man to have all these qualities? Even gods have not been able to possess them, and how can a human being aspire to perfection? Yet this mind of mine has been aching to know of such a person, hoping that there is a perfect man." Narada Narada, who knew the past, the present, and the future, was very pleased with the speculation of Valmiki, and he replied, "Listen to me carefully. I happen to know of such a man." He looked thoughtful, as though he were trying to collect his memories, and said, "As you rightly observed, it is very hard to find a single individual endowed with all these glorious qualities which you have enumerated. But I will tell you about one who can be said to have attained perfection in this world of men. In the line of Ikshvakus, there is a king by name Rama. He is the man you are looking for. He is unruffled by the sway of the emotions. He is powerful, and he has a very attractive personality. He has charm, and at the same time, he is firm in his mind. He is highly intelligent and just. He has no foes, since he has subdued all of them. As for his looks, he is broad-shouldered, with long arms, a wide chest, a large and beautiful forehead, and a very attractive gait. He is neither too tall nor too short. He has large and liquid eyes. He is well versed in the Shastras and is very jealous of his personal honor. He is a great archer, and he is ever pondering on the great truth beyond the comprehension of all human thought. He is dear to everyone. He is very noble and good, and all gentle people gravitate towards him like the rivers flow continuously towards the ocean. Rama knows no partiality, and he is ever gentle and pleasant in his speech. All the good and great qualities which you are looking for in a man are found in this king who is the son of Kausalya. In nobility, he resembles the mighty ocean and he is firm in his convictions like the great Himavan. In prowess, he is like Narayana and he is as pleasing to the sight as the moon. If his anger is aroused, he will be like the fire which burns up the universe at the end of time. Patient like Mother Earth, he is generous like Kubera. He is like Dharma, the Lord of righteousness in truthfulness, and in short, he is a paragon of all the virtues which adorn the human being. Valmiki, who had been sitting quiet all the while, became greatly excited at the words of Narada, and his eyes flashed with a great happiness. Loath to interrupt the flow of words from the lips of Narada, his eyes beseeched the divine Rishi to tell him more. Sensing his eagerness, Narada, with a smile lighting his young face, continued his talk. Dasharatha, the father of Rama, said Narada, was very eager to crown his eldest son Rama as the Yuvaraja of the kingdom. Rama, who was noble, who was the home of all virtues, the great qualities we spoke of just now. The king began to make all preparations for the coronation. His younger wife, Kaikeyi, however, was against the coronation. With the help of two boons which she had been granted long ago, she made the king agree to her stipulations. One of them was the crowning of her son Bharata as the king, and the other was the banishment of Rama to the dreaded Dandaka forest. The unfortunate king, bound as he was by his promise, had to conform to her wishes, and he banished Rama to the forest. The noble prince Rama agreed to go away to please his father and to fulfill the promise of the king. Rama's brother Lakshmana, who was born of Sumitra, was devoted to Rama, and he decided to accompany Rama in his exile. Rama had a wife by name Sita. She was dear to him as his very life. She was the daughter of Janaka. Born, as she was, of a noble race, this jewel among women followed her lord Rama even as the star Rohini does the moon. On the banks of the river Ganga dwelt a hunter by name Guha. Rama spent the first night of his exile in Shringi Berapura, the capital of the hunter king. After sending the charioteer Sumantra back to Ayodhya, the capital of Ikshwaku kings, Rama, Lakshmana and Sita crossed the river Ganga with the help of Guha. They then arrived at the ashrama of Bharadwaja. The rishi advised them to go to the hill by name Chitrakuta and to build a hermitage there. They crossed many coppices and fords and small rivers and finally arrived at the hill by name Chitrakuta. Lakshmana built a hermitage and the three of them were dwelling happily there in the midst of so much natural beauty. Even as Rama was approaching Chitrakuta, Dasharatha, his father, unable to bear the separation from his beloved son Rama, abandoned his mortal frame and was gathered to his forefathers. Bharata had all the while been with his uncle Yudhajit, the brother of Kaikeyi. Vashishta, the royal preceptor, sent for him, and when the funeral obsequies were completed, the wise man told Bharata about the danger of a country which was without a ruler and asked Bharata to take up the reins of the kingdom and rule it as his father had done. Bharata refused to do so. Instead, he made up his mind to go to the forest, meet Rama and bring him back to Ayodhya. He went to Chitrakuta accompanied by his subjects and the ministers and Vashishta. He met Rama and beseeched him to accept the kingdom. He said, "My lord, you are the king and you must come back and take up the responsibility of ruling the kingdom." But Rama, who was ever famed for granting anyone his wish, was firm in this one instance and refused to grant Bharata his wish. He would not accept the kingdom since that would falsify his father's promise. Finally, as a compromise, Bharata asked for the sandals of Rama and told him that he would place them on the throne and rule the kingdom in the name of Rama as his representative. Rama agreed to it. Bharata took an oath that he would enter Ayodhya only with Rama. He therefore stayed in a small village by name Nandigrama, which was on the fringe of the city of Ayodhya. There he stayed dressed in tree bark and deerskin and with his hair matted even as Rama's and Lakshmana's were. He was governing the country, waiting eagerly for the coming of Rama. Om Shri Ramarpanamastu. Chapter 1a of Balakanda, Valmiki and Narada. Jai Shri Ram. Rama, in the meantime, felt that he should abandon Chitrakuta since the people of Ayodhya knew his whereabouts. Therefore, he decided to penetrate into the Dandaka. The first event in the Dandaka was his slaying of the Rakshasa by name Virada. He then proceeded to the ashramas of Sharabhanga, Sutikshana, Agastya, and the brother of Agastya. Agastya made a gift of the great bow of Indra to Rama. He also gave him a beautiful sword and 2 quivers which were inexhaustible. The rishis in the forest approached Rama with a request. They told him about their being harassed by the Rakshasas who were dwelling in their midst and asked Rama to protect them. Rama listened to them and told them that he would do so. He said that he would destroy all the Rakshasas. It was a solemn promise made by Rama. They went to a spot by name Panchavati. It was on the banks of the river Godavari and it was beautiful. There, Lakshmana built an ashrama and they spent a happy time there. By now, 13 years had been spent in exile. When they were in Panchavati, Shurpanakha, Rakshasi, who was dwelling in the Janasthana, came to Rama and expressed her love for him. Incensed at this, Rama caused her to be disfigured. Lakshmana took up his sword and cut off her nose and ears. She went to her brother Kara and complained to him about the insult to herself by 2 mere men. At her instigation, Kara, Dushyana, and Trishiris, with an army made up of 14,000 Rakshasas, accosted Rama. Rama killed all of them single-handed and thus rid the Janasthana of all the Rakshasas. Kara and the other 2 were cousins of Ravana, the lord of Lanka. Hearing about the incidents in Janasthana, Ravana decided to avenge the deaths of his cousins and the destruction of the army and also the insult to Surpanakha. He went to Maricha, a Rakshasa, for assistance. Maricha tried in many ways to convince Ravana of the prowess of Rama and about the dangers of arousing his anger. But Ravana paid no heed to his words. Prodded as he was by fate, Ravana took Maricha with him and arrived in the neighborhood of the ashrama of Rama. With the help of his Maya, at which he was an adept, Maricha lured Rama and later Lakshmana away from the ashrama. And when Sita was alone in the ashrama, Ravana carried her away. Jatayu, the king of eagles, was a friend of Rama and he tried in vain to prevent Ravana from abducting Sita. He was fatally wounded and Ravana went away with the princess. When they came back to the ashrama, Rama and Lakshmana found it empty. With Sita abducted and with seeing Jatayu who was dying, Rama was beside himself with grief and anguish. He heard about Ravana from the lips of dying Jatayu, and when the eagle died, Rama performed the funeral rites for him as he would for his own father. The 2 brothers then went southwards in search of Sita. While they were proceeding thus, they were caught in the arms of a gruesome looking Rakshasa by name Kabanda. His arms were a yojana long each, and his head was in his stomach. His mouth was wide open to swallow his victims. Kabanda was, in reality, the son of Kubera, who had been cursed to assume this form. When he was killed by the brothers, he regained his celestial form and returned to the heaven. Before leaving him, Kabanda told Rama about Shabari, a devotee of Rama who was waiting for the coming of Rama. Kabanda also said that on top of the Rishyamukha hill dwelt a Vanara by name Sugriva who would help Rama to find Sita. Rama went to the ashrama of Shabari, was worshipped by her, and he gave her leave to reach the heavens which she had earned by her tapas. Rama and Lakshmana proceeded on their journey and reached the lake known by the name Pampa, and after passing it, they were wandering around at the foot of the hill Rishyamukha. They were accosted by Hanuman, the minister of Sugriva. Hanuman too then took them to the presence of Sugriva. A great and lasting friendship was formed between these two, Rama and Sugriva, and this was forged by fire which was kindled by the wise Hanuman. Rama recounted to Sugriva about himself and about the misfortune which had befallen him, the abduction of Sita by some Rakshasa. Sugriva came out with his story and the unfortunate condition he was in, banished from his city by his brother Vali. Rama promised to kill Vali to please Sugriva. The Vanara was dubious about the prowess of Rama, and he recounted the many acts of valor performed by his brother. To assure him of his own superior strength, Rama lifted the skeleton of one Dundubhi with the tip of his toe and flung it to a distance of 10 yojanas. And again, with a single arrow, he pierced 7 glorious Sala trees. Sugriva was ashamed of himself for his lack of faith in Rama and said, "This arrow of yours has pierced the 7 Salas, split the earth open, and after entering the tune, which had befallen him, the abduction of Sita by some Rakshasa." Sugriva came out with his own story and the unfortunate condition he was banished from his brother Vali. Never before have I seen such valor. Forgive me for doubting you. They went to Kishkinda, the capital city of Vali. Sugriva called out to the great warrior Vali and challenged him to come out and fight with him. Rama killed Vali with a single arrow and established Sugriva on the throne of the dead Vali. Sugriva then summoned his entire army and dispatched his men to all the 4 quarters to search for Sita. Hanuman, accompanied by Angada, the son of Vali, went towards the south. There, directed by Sampati, the eagle king, who was the brother of Jatayu, Hanuman crossed the sea, which was 100 yojanas wide. He reached the island by name Lanka. There, in the king's pleasure garden by name Ashokavana, Hanuman found Sita, who was kept there as a captive. Thinking only of Rama, the princess was a picture of woe. Hanuman announced himself to her, gave her the signet ring which Rama had sent, and comforted her with words of encouragement. He gave her news about Rama and Lakshmana, and he told her that Rama, assisted by Sugriva and his army, would soon arrive in Lanka and rescue her from Ravana. Hanuman then destroyed the Ashokavana. Ravana sent his army to capture him, but 5 of his commanders and 7 of their sons, as also the brave Akshaya, the son of Ravana, were killed by Hanuman. Indrajit, another son of Ravana, came and dispatched the Brahmastra at Hanuman. The Vanara did not want to insult the great Brahma, and so he allowed himself to be bound by the Astra. He was then taken to the court of Ravana. There, after he burnt the city of Lanka and returned to the presence of Rama, he carried with him the good tidings that Sita was alive and that she was a captive of Ravana. Accompanied by Sugriva, Rama came to the shores of the sea. When the Lord of the Seas would not make way for him and his army, Rama was highly incensed and threatened to burn up the entire sea. The king of waters appeared in front of Rama and asked him to build a bridge across the sea which would take them to Lanka. Accordingly, Nala, the architect, built the bridge, crossing the seas. Rama went to Lanka, killed Ravana, and rescued Sita. However, he spoke harsh words to her. Unable to bear the stinging insults, Sita entered fire. Agni, the god of fire, brought her to Rama out of the flames and told Rama that he should not accept her since she was without any taint. The world above and the world of men praised the prowess of Rama. They celebrated the great achievements of Rama. After crowning Vibhishana, the brother of Ravana, as the king of Lanka, Rama made up his mind to turn his steps homewards. With the blessings of the Devas, the Vanaras who had died in the war came back to life, and there was great rejoicing. In the celestial chariot by name Pushpaka, Rama, along with his friends, proceeded towards Ayodhya. He went to the ashrama of Bharadwaja first to pay his respects to him, and from there he sent Hanuman to Bharata to inform him of his return. Rama then went to Nandigrama with Sugriva. In Nandigrama, he was reunited with his brothers Bharata and Shatrughna. After getting rid of his matted locks, Rama assumed the garments of a king and was crowned king of Kosala. The people were thrilled with the return of Rama, and there was great rejoicing in the city of Ayodhya. Rama rules the kingdom righteously, and there is not a breath of adharma in the rule of Rama. After performing 100 Ashwamedas, Rama will reach the heavens. He will establish dharma on the earth. He will rule for 11,000 years before he leaves the earth. One who hears this tale of Rama will be assured of a place in heaven. Having recounted the story of Rama to Valmiki, Narada took leave of him and went away from his ashrama. Om Shri Ramar Pranamast. Chapter 2 of Ramayana's Balakanda. The coming of Brahma. Jai Shri Ram. After the departure of Narada, Valmiki was sitting quiet for a while, thinking on the glorious personage, Rama, and his mind was dwelling on Rama. The Rishi suddenly realized that it was time for him to perform his morning worship, and so, accompanied by his disciple, he went to the banks of the river Tamasa, which was very near the more famous Ganga. He saw a spot where the water was pellucid, and he stopped in his tracks. He spoke to his disciple and said, "Son, the water here is clear and pure like the mind of a good man. Look how beautiful it is. I have decided to perform my ablutions here in this pot. Place the water pot here on the ground and give me the tree bark." The disciple did as he was bid. With the Valkala in his hand, the Rishi looked all around him, his eyes pleased with the beauty of the surroundings. He took a few steps here and there and smiled to himself as he saw how lavish Mother Nature had been in her bounty in this particular place. Looking up at a tree, the Rishi saw a couple of Krauncha birds. They were singing happily in their sweet and melodious voices, and they were very much in love with each other. They were making love, and Valmiki's eyes rested on them with tolerant amusement. Even as he was looking, he saw the male Krauncha fall down, hit by an arrow. Valmiki saw a hunter, sinful and cruel, who had just shot an arrow at the bird. The bird was lying dead on the ground, drenched in blood, and the female Krauncha was wailing piteously, and her joyous song of a moment ago had turned into a mournful dirge. The small bird with its red head was full of sorrow. Valmiki saw the cruel act of the hunter and its sad consequence, and his heart was filled with compassion. He knew what an adharmi the hunter had been, and he spoke in an impassioned voice. You have been merciless in your action. You killed one of these two birds when they were making love. Your act is unforgivable. You will therefore be denied the long span of life granted to man. Valmiki then turned away from him and left the spot in a hurry. His heart was still full of sadness, and he thought over the incident long after he had gone away from there. He kept remembering the words he had spoken to the hunter, and he repeated them in his mind. He told his disciples, I was very sad because of what had happened to the Krauncha birds, and I spoke some words. Born as they were out of my sorrow, these words are so arranged that they follow a meter. They seem to form a sloka which can even be sung to the accompaniment of the drone of the veena. I am amazed at the sloka which I seem to have composed. The disciple learnt the sloka, and when he repeated it, there was wonder at the formation of it. Valmiki then entered the river and performed the ablutions, the worship of the sun, and all the daily rituals. But his mind was all the while dwelling on the shloka. They returned to the ashrama, the rishi in the lead, and the disciple carrying the water pot, filled now with the pure water from the tamasa. Valmiki entered the ashrama and with his other disciples pursued with him the study of the sacred lore. While he was thus engaged, he found the hermitage filled suddenly with a heavenly glow. He looked up and saw Lord Brahma himself standing there. He looked up and saw Lord Brahma himself standing there. He got up with a feeling of awe and stood with folded palms. He could not speak a word, so overcome was he with the suddenness of it all. He then worshipped the Creator in the proper manner, fell at his feet and offered arghya, padya, and a befitting seat. Brahma honored him by accepting his homage and the seat offered to him. After seating himself at the command of Brahma, Valmiki sat silent, and his mind was pondering on the event of the river bank. He could not still grasp the cruelty of a hunter who could deliberately kill the happy bird without any cause whatsoever. Again, the sloka came to his mind, and he repeated it to himself silently. Brahma smiled at him and, divining his thoughts, said, Do not wonder any more about the words you spoke. It is a sloka, and there is no doubt about it. I willed you to speak thus. I want you to compose a great poem in the same meter. Relate the story of Rama. Narada told you the story of Rama, who is famed the world over for his righteousness, for his nobility, his intelligence, his courage. I will grant this boon to you. You will be able to know what passed in the minds of every one of them, Rama, Lakshmana, Sita, and the many participants in the strange tale. In short, there will be nothing which is a secret withheld from you. You will know everything which happened and every thought in the mind of each of them. In this single kavya which you are going to compose, there will not be a single word of untruth spoken. I command you to relate to the world of men the sacred story of Rama, set in the same meter in which you composed the shloka you are thinking about, the Anustup meter. The world will be the richer for the composition of yours. So long as the story of Rama is remembered in the world, you will also be remembered. Your name will be immortal because of what you are going to do. Brahma vanished from the presence of Valmiki after he had spoken these words. Valmiki was still in a daze, and so were his disciples. They repeated the sloka again and again, and with each repetition, the wonderment grew. Om Shri Ramarpanamastu. Chapter 3 of Ramayana's Balakanda. Valmiki composes the great poem Jai Shri Ram. Valmiki touched water to purify himself. He then spread dharba grass on the floor and sat on it facing the east. He closed his eyes and went into a deep trance. He thought of the task assigned to him and he told himself, as the Lord has commanded, I will compose the poem in the meter which came into my mind and in the sloka form. It will be the story of Rama and his achievements, and I will name it the Ramayana. The more he thought about it, the clearer became his vision and his intellect, and he could see with his mind's eye all the many events which had taken place. He could visualize the old king Dasharatha with his wives around him, looking at his 4 sons with eyes filled with joy and pride. And he saw Rama and Lakshmana with Sita in the Dandaka forest. It was as clear to him as the palm of his hand. The great Rishi related to the world the glorious story of Rama, and the poem was full of noble thoughts and noble deeds. Like the ocean is full of rare and costly gems. Valmiki remembered the manner in which Narada had spoken of Rama, and in the same strain he composed the Kavya. It was made up of beautiful sounding words, words which were pleasing to the mind as well as to the ears, which were faultless in their formation, and their meaning was as clear as the waters of a placid lake in the Himalaya. In a short while, he was able to compose the poem. He had completed the epic Ramayana, which spoke of the story of Rama, of the killing of Ravana. There were 24,000 verses, slokas in the Kavya, and the Rishi was pleased with what he had done. He divided the Kavya into 6 sections. 500 chapters were needed to relate the story in its completeness. After the completion of the Kavya, Valmiki was wondering about the proper person who would be able to recite the poem and thus propagate it. Even as he was thinking on it, 2 youngsters, Kusha and Lava, came to his presence, prostrated before him and took the dust off his feet. The youngsters, who were princes, had been with the Rishi to learn the sacred lore. They had very attractive voices, and since they were twins, their voices blended together very well. To them, Valmiki taught the Kavya by name Ramayana. They learnt it and they sang it to the accompaniment of the Veena. They sang like Gandharvas. These 2 handsome, sweet-spoken boys with their large eyes were the sons of Rama. After they had learned the entire Kavya, the youngsters began to travel from ashrama to ashrama, singing all the while the story of Rama. Once, Rama was performing the great yaga by name Ashwamedha, the horse sacrifice. The young princess, dressed in tree bark and deer skin, went to the spot, and there, in the midst of the many rishis assembled there, they sang the Ramayana. The rishis listened with tears in their eyes to this glorious tale filled with all the nine emotions which a kavya should have. And they praised the youngsters. The fame of these two young boys was the only topic of conversation among the rishis and others who had heard them, and the news reached the ears of Rama, the king. He saw them too with their veenas, and he heard their voices from a distance. His curiosity was soon kindled, and he sent for them. They came to his palace, and he welcomed them. In the council hall was seated Rama, surrounded by his ministers and his dear brothers. He had assumed the garb properly for one performing the yaga, and he was charmed by the looks of the youngsters. He spoke to his brothers and said, "They glow with the radiance which is unearthly, and their voices is heavenly too. Let us listen to them." The song, which was accompanied by the hypnotic drone of the Venas, filled the hall. As the tale progressed, Rama, who was seated on the throne, descended unobtrusively from there step by step and sat on the floor with the others, listening to the glorious kavya. He sat spellbound, and he listened as though it were the story of someone else and not himself. Tears were flowing from his eyes when he sat down to listen to the Ramayana. This story concerns the great line of king whose founder was Manu, and which has been immortalized by the name of Ikshvaku, the son of Manu, and later by Sagara and others. Thus began the kavya, and Rama sat and listened as though he were figure carved out of a block of marble. Shri Ramaya Ramabhadraya Ramachandraya Vedase Raghunathaya Nathaya Sita Yapataye Namaha. Shri Ramar Pranamastha. Chapter 4 of Ramayana's Balakanda. Dasharatha and his grief. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramachandraya Namaha. Jai Shri Ram. There was a country by name Kosala, and on the outskirts of the country flowed the river Sarayu. The land belonged to the Ikshvakus, the descendants of Manu, one of the Prajapatis. Kosala was beautiful and was famed for its beauty, the richness of its soil, its luscious greenery, the abundance of its crops, its wealth and its prosperity. The kings of the solar race who had always ruled it were famed the world over for their valor and for their righteousness. The capital of the land of Kosala was Ayodhya. Tradition had it that Manu, the great lawgiver, had created the city. It was a wondrous city with flowering trees and with wide, beautiful roads where the king rode every day. The roads were well laid out, and the royal pathway was ever beautiful with flowers and scented water sprinkled on it all the time. Ayodhya was like Amaravati, the city of Indra. Ayodhya was ruled by Dasharatha even as Amaravati was by Indra. Dasharatha had earned for himself the name Rajarshi, since he had always been a God-fearing man. He was a wise king. He had charmed his subjects by his good nature. As befitted a scion of the race of Ikshvaku, he had earned the praise of all the many rishis and good people for his prowess coupled with gentleness. He had performed all the yagnas which a king had to perform, and he was a king beloved by all. The people were happy and contented. None of them was jealous and not one was avaricious. They were all rich and they spoke nothing but the truth. Everyone was wealthy and everyone was noble. There was no meanness, no lust, and even ugliness was absent. The people were all well read and no one was an atheist. There was no unhappiness in the mind of even one of them. Such a good king was Dasharatha, the descendant of Ikshvaku. Dasharatha had 8 ministers who were well versed in the art of advising the king in matters of importance. They were highly intelligent, great diplomats, and they were all the time interested in the well being of their king and his subjects. The ministers were Dhriti, Jayanta, Vijaya, Siddhartha, Artha Sadhaka, Ashoka, Mantrapala, and Sumantra. The king also had great priests and rituals. The chief of them were Vashishta and Vamadeva. They were great scholars and they were famed for their learning, for their pride and self respect, for their self control, their penance. They were glorious men who had thoughts only of the good of others, the king and his subjects. The king's ministers were so efficient that there was nothing which escaped their notice. They knew about the happenings in all the neighboring countries. The treasury of the king was ever full, and so was the granary. Such a great king who had everything he could wish for was not perfectly happy. He had no son to make him happy. The line of the Ikshvakus threatened to terminate with him since he had no one to succeed him. King Dasharatha was unhappy because of this, and this sorrow ate into his vitals day and night. And as he grew older, his sorrow increased too. One day, while thinking on this, the king thought, "Why should I not perform the yaga by name Ashwamedha? I have been told that it is a rewarding yaga. Perhaps my prayers may be answered if I perform the horse sacrifice." He called for a meeting of his counselors. When they had all come, the king asked them to be seated and sent Sumantra to fetch the rishis who surrounded him during the performance of religious rites. He said, "Sumantra, bring to me the revered gurus, Vashishta, Vamadeva, Suyagna, Jabhali, Kashyapa, and their disciples too." Within a short while, Sumantra brought all of them to the great council hall. The king received them all with due honor, and after seating them properly, paying attention to their status, the king spoke to them. "Surrounded as I am by the wealth of this land and by many beautiful objects of pleasure, still my mind is sorely troubled by sorrow. I have no son, and that makes me unhappy. I feel that the performing of the Ashwamedha may be an answer to my prayers. This is just a thought that has occurred to me. It is up to all of you to weigh it carefully and tell me if I have thought right." They approved of his suggestion and said, "O king, this desire of yours to perform the Ashwamedha for the purpose of continuing the glorious line of the Ikshvakus is indeed commendable. That you should have thought of it is in itself a sign that your wishes will be granted. It is but right that we should hasten and make preparations for the yaga to be performed. Let us, from now, collect the materials for it. The horse should be found. Let the Yagnasala be built on the northern side of the river Sarayu." The king was very pleased with the spontaneous approval of those assembled in the hall. With his eyes wide open with joy, he spoke to his ministers. "Take the advice of my Acharyas and make all the arrangements. Construct the Yagnasala on the northern banks of the Sarayu as has been suggested. All the rituals must be performed properly. Any lapse will cause severe repercussions on all of us. Be very careful to listen to the biddings of the mentors. Vashishta and the others. We will obey you and the great ones, said the ministers, and the great hall emptied itself slowly. There was a strange glow of happiness on the face of the king. Something inside him seemed to assure him that he would be blessed with a son, and with that thought uppermost in his mind, he entered the inner apartments and told his wives about his decision. When he was alone in his chambers, came to the king his charioteer Sumantra. He said, "My lord, I remembered suddenly something which I had heard long ago. I thought it but right that I should come to you immediately with the information I have. The news is very ancient, and so it had slipped from my memory till now. But when you spoke of the yaga, I remembered it. Many years ago, the famous rishi by name Sanat Kumara had spoken about the birth of your son in the presence of several rishis. He said, Kashyapa, the revered sage, has a son by name Vibhandaka. He will be the father of Rishya Shringa. This son of Vibhandaka will live in the forest with his father. He will not know any other human being, and he will look to his father for the smallest action which he has to perform. He will be innocent in the ways of the world. In course of time, a king will be ruling the country by name Anga. His name will be Romapada. Because of a slight misdeed, the king of his country will suffer. A terrible famine will visit the country of Anga, and the king will ask the advice of holy men as to how he can pacify the gods and bring rain to the country. And the holy men will say, O king, if the son of sage Vibhandaka is brought to the country, rain will follow in his wake. The young man is called Rishya Shringa, and if you bring him to your country and give your daughter Shanta to him in marriage, there will be an end to the dread famine. The king will wonder as to how this can be achieved. He will request his wise ministers and preceptors in his court to go to the forest to bring the young sage. But the anger of Vibhandaka is too well known, and no one will have the courage to go. They will advise the king to send the courtesans of the palace to the forest, and they will succeed where others are afraid to venture. Rishyashringa will later preside over a yagna which will be performed by Dasharatha, and because of this, the king will be the father of the sons. Sumantra continued, My lord, if you should, with the permission of Guru Vashishta, approach the Rishi Rishya Shringha and beseech him to perform a yagna for you, the prophecy of Sanat Kumara is certain to come true. Let me assure you that Sanat Kumara has said that you will be the father of 4 sons who will be valiant and who will be famed the world over. Please go to the kingdom of Anga and do not hesitate or delay. Om Shri Ramar Panamast.